Okay, if everybody could take their seats. Everybody could take their seats, please. Except the panelists. Since I'm blocking their seats. All right. Good. Let me welcome everybody here. Hi, Chad. Welcome to all of you. We're so excited to have you here for this event. Welcome to members of the Southway Conservationists. Welcome to friends, neighbors, and all supporters of wildlife. I am Monty Murray. I'm the president of the Southway Conservationists, and we are part of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. And we care a lot about wildlife, especially the red wolves, which we're going to talk about tonight. First thing I want to ask is, I saw some people that were coming here from some distance. So who came from far away to get here? In fact, I think some people just traveled from far away. Where'd you come from? Virginia. Thank you. Anybody else? Duplin County, which is down by the coast. Where is that? It is. Okay. Okay. Thanks for coming. Okay. And I think a couple of people traveled just recently from internationally. Well, go ahead. Loti, where are you from? Tryon, outside of Asheville. And you just traveled from New Zealand just for this. Jen, I think, and you just came from another major destination. Tanzania. Okay. I don't know who wins, but those are pretty far travelers. Thanks for coming tonight. As I said, we are a chapter of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. Our mission is to conserve and improve wildlife habitat and diversity. So we do a lot of public outreach. We do conservation projects. We do gardening, pollinator gardens. We have 7 different pollinator gardens that we host and maintain. So we do a lot, and we have an Eco Kids program, which is a lot of fun too. We're trying to get kids connected with nature. This is our first in-person event or meeting since COVID. So it's been 3 years since we've done this. It's also our first simulcast. We've never done it where we're actually doing a broadcast to Zoom. So we have about 50 people online right now across the state, as well as I see there's somebody from New York, somebody from Texas, DC, Virginia, Georgia, and South Carolina. So there are some interested parties with red wolves outside of just North Carolina, although this is the heart of it. We have a very special program today on a keystone species. Keystone species, as you know, is one that is critical to the whole ecosystem. Without the keystone species, everything else kind of falls apart. Red wolves fall in that category. They're the predator keystone species. And this is a very exciting moment for us because we have some very special guests here tonight, which I'll introduce in a minute. We're going to screen 2 new documentaries that were created all about the red wolves. And we're also, in a moment, going to introduce the producers and the directors. But first, let's have a few guidelines from Luke. Luke is our conservation coordinator from the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. He's also air traffic control for the webinar. So come on up here. He also, I must tell you, those that don't know, just hiked a few months ago from the coast up to the mountains, all 1,175 miles uphill on the Mountains to Sea Trail, all to earn money for conservation and wildlife conservation. So.
Yeah, and I ate a lot of food along the way, so had a lot of really nice people host me for nights and stuff along that journey. Yeah, so as Monty said, my name is Luke Bennett. I'm the conservation coordinator for the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this special event hosted by the Southway Conservationists, a community wildlife chapter of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. So just a few quick logistical things before we get started. As Monty said, this is a hybrid event. So there are folks joining us all over the place on Zoom. And for those folks, we ask that if you have a question, to either type it into the chat and I'll ask it myself, or you can go down and press the reactions button. And from there, you can go to raise your hand. that will notify me that you have a question, and then I can allow you to unmute yourself and you can ask away, and the audience and the panelists should be able to hear you. I think that covers everything, but again, thank you all for being here. And without further ado, I'll hand it back over to Monty, who will introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Luke. And if you have a question in the room, our trusty assistant, Eli, where's Eli? Stand up, Eli. Eli is going to be in charge of running this microphone around. Please ask for a microphone if you want to ask a question, because that way people who are online can actually hear you. And that's important. Thanks, Eli. Okay, so now with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. We have Cassia Rivera, who's the producer of the two films and also a member of our chapter. You come on. Dale Weiler and Loti Woods, who are co-founders of the Weiler Woods for Wildlife, which is a nonprofit wildlife advocacy organization. Jennifer Hadley is the film director. And Nancy Earhart is the photography director. I'm going to turn it over to Cassie.
Hi, everyone. I just want to first say thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It's just humbling, and we're so grateful for the opportunity to present these two films that are just straight from the heart for our conservationists on the front lines. And so before we show Rite of Passage, I wanted to get into a little bit of the backstory with that and how that came about. Sorry, I'm not used to being on this side of the lens. So basically, in 2021, the summer of that, a landmark milestone legislation was passed in the state of Florida called the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act. And basically the state of Florida connected and is protecting land throughout the entire state so that wildlife can move from the southern part all the way through the panhandle. Excuse me. And one of the things that was important for me to do in that same summer, we had a red wolf wildlife population that was completely decimated by vehicle strike mortalities. So for me, I wanted to get down there and I wanted to see what it's like to hike through sections of the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So I did that I started in the western side, then went central Florida, and then to the eastern side. So from that, I was fully immersed in what it feels, looks, and smells like to be a part of nature that's protected. So simultaneously, while Florida is celebrating this milestone, our conservationists in Eastern North Carolina were reeling at the loss of all of these red wolves. So when I got back, I went to my team here of trusted women and I said, guys, I have this idea. What if we created a documentary highlighting what's really going on down there, and creating a tangible asset for these conservationists to have support, to be seen, to bring the public finally to the front lines of what's happening. And so that's where we really took off. And we had less than 6 months to make it happen, because we did have a couple on the landscapes where we knew there could be a wildlife or a red wolf litter being born. That was a possibility. So for us, the time was yesterday, and so we just went to work, and it was a lot of work, but what you're going to see tonight is a true labor of love. So if you have any questions at the end, we'd love it to be very interactive. And then without further ado.
As the sun rises over eastern North Carolina, the sounds of nature usher in the beautiful echoes of habitats teeming with wildlife. Over 200,000 acres of pristine, protected lands create a safe haven for flora and fauna. These unique habitats, consisting of wetlands, farmlands, and hardwood forests, are home to a diverse range of reptiles, amphibians, fish, birds, and mammals. The rich and diverse ecosystem here plays a key role in supporting a thriving wildlife population. Unfortunately, not every species has a bright future. With less than 20 individuals left in the wild, the critically endangered red wolf struggles to safely navigate towards survival. What is one of the biggest challenges these red wolves face? Habitat fragmentation. Highway systems used by locals and tourists and for the transportation of goods flank and intersect these protected wildlife habitats. During the past decade, 5 counties within the U.S. 64-264 highway corridors documented over 8,000 vehicle and wildlife collisions. Over 1,000 humans were injured, and 18 human lives were lost. Protecting the path of the red wolf has remained a great challenge to North Carolina conservationists. Fortunately, there are those behind the scenes who continue to work tirelessly to give red wolves their rite of passage.
Last spring, early summer, we released 4 captive-born red wolves, and 3 of those 4 died as a result of vehicle strike mortalities. And if you look at the history of the red wolf program over the course of time since 1987, when they were first reintroduced, vehicle strike mortalities were the second leading cause of mortality. But when you're releasing captive-born adults, they probably are going to have an even higher percentage of vehicle mortality. So that just drove home to me and all of us that we need to do something more to try to reduce vehicle mortalities.
Highway caution signs are strategically placed where red wolf movement has been tracked by collars equipped with GPS technology.
We came on this idea of these mobile highway signs. The intention was to put them proactively around on the highways closest to where we were releasing new red wolves. We determined the closest points and we put one on each side to alert motorists that it was potential that you would have a red wolf crossing. And the signs have had a lot more impact than even we imagined. We imagined that they would alert visitors in that area that there was red wolf crossings and potentially reduce vehicle strike mortalities. But people are noticing those signs, and it's getting a lot of buzz, a lot of social media, a lot of talked about, and the communities are recognizing, even ones that didn't even necessarily know they lived near a red wolf population, that there are red wolves here.
Orange collars with reflective strips are placed on newly released wolves in hopes that they will be easily identifiable to the public and visible to motorists at night.
So when they see that orange reflective material, they'll know that's a red wolf on the highway and be able to adjust their driving as they can. And we've seen with these new releases, there have been several of them that have been on or near highways, and we've gotten lots of reports that people are seeing that orange reflective material, and I've seen it myself. And I do believe that it has reduced vehicle strike mortalities with these new releases.
The implementation of these orange collars, along with the strategic placement of the mobile highway caution signs, are just some of the pieces to the puzzle in creating a safer environment for red wolves to travel within. Pray for the Pack is an initiative started in hopes of creating habitat connectivity.
I really love Pray for the Pack. I think it's such a great initiative and partnership because not only does it tackle the public perception problem that we have where there's a lot of misconception going on, but it also tackles the habitat connectivity problem that we have going on. And in addition to that, we also help local landowners that want to accomplish big projects but may not have the methods or the ability in order to do it. And it's a really great win-win type situation because we get to help inform and bring awareness to the public as well as help them achieve projects that they've been really wanting to do. So I'm hoping we get more people, but it's a really great program.
While connecting habitats is critical to the survival of red wolves, education to dispel the misconceptions surrounding them is also a key component to the success of their future.
When I do a program, the first thing I say is I'm going to say the word wolf and you come tell me what you think. Usually it's snarling and teeth. So people see wolves as snarling, they're going to attack me. So then I need to talk about how wolves communicate and how they use their body. They use their teeth, their tail, their body posture. How does that communicate? What does that mean? Well, we know through studies what that means. And so that's important. I think wolves are incredible families. There is some sense of family, and that's really important to them. And we know that not just because we're humans and we see that. There have been a lot of studies that show that wolves are really good family unit. I think it's something we can relate to. And I think finding those points as humans that we can relate to an animal, I think helps us understand it better.
Join the pack to help give red wolves their rite of passage.
So are there any questions right off the bat that anyone would like to ask right now? We have a very special microphone hander outer, my son Eli.
All right. What's the, is there a relationship between red wolves in North Carolina? And isn't there a species of wolf down in the Mexican-US border that's closely related?
So, yeah, so the wolves you're referring to are Mexican wolves, and they are also critically endangered. And they are closer related, obviously, to red wolves than to gray wolves. But yes, that's, I'm not sure of their numbers at the moment. Yeah, they're a subspecies, but there's about 200 of them, unlike red wolves, which there's probably about less than 20 right now. So.
This isn't a question, it's a comment. I don't want to seem disparaging because in my former life as with wildlife, worked a lot, or I had a lot of faculty and staff that worked in Florida on the key deer and the auto accidents and how to, all that sort of thing. But you'd fail to point out that the precipitous decline in the red wolf population in North Carolina from somewhere around 120 or so down to 8 happened right after the North Carolina Wildlife Commission approved night hunting of coyotes. The farmers just shot them all. I mean, I'm sure a lot were killed on the highways, but it was our own Wildlife Commission that destroyed the red wolves, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for making that point. One of the main parts of this story was to only focus on the major problem that was the vehicle wildlife strike collisions, because the habitat that is over 200,000 acres that is home to the red wolves is fragmented. And there's 2 major highway systems that are used for tourism to the Outer Banks, for transportation of goods. I mean, we've had hundreds of 18-wheelers pass us on the roads where they cross. So we do know that there are definitely other mortality issues for the population, but this one was the one we really wanted to tackle. Thank you.
I think red wolf puppies are, wait, why is this thing so loud? What do red wolves eat?
Well, red wolves eat lots of things, especially small animals like raccoons and possums, and sometimes bunny rabbits, and sometimes small white-tailed deer, but they also like things like blueberries. And one of their favorite foods is nutria, which are large rodents coming up from South America. So that's a good thing for them to be eating those. But blueberries is one they like too.
No one else take this way.
I know it may probably be a moonshot, but California built a land bridge for animals. I was just wondering, is there any possibility or have been any discussion about asking the state to do something similar? Or
That is an excellent question. In 2011, I believe the NCDOT part. Highway, that's another big challenge, but funding first, which is what we hope to change in the next decade.
Are there locations around the country where red wolves are being bred in captivity, basically to be ultimately put back into the wild? And how many are there, and how many, puppies and so on are out there that potentially over the next 2, 5, 10 years, whatever, could actually get back out into the wild?
Well, the good news is there are 50 different locations across the country that are breeding red wolves, everywhere from Washington State to several in Florida up into New York. Last year, there were 29 puppies that survived, and there are about 245 adults and pups in human care right now. They'd like to get the population up to 400 in order to really be able to rewild some of those wolves out in eastern North Carolina.
While there's only one release site right now here in North Carolina, the government is looking at other release sites around the country in their historic range, which goes as far as Illinois down to Texas and all up and down the East Coast from New York all the way down to Florida. But they haven't made any statements yet in terms of where those new release sites are going to be.
The Recovering Wildlife Act, I'm not sure if it's passed, but if it does, how will that help red wolves?
I do not have that answer for you, but I can say that in the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, just in our organization, we have people that are lobbying or going to Washington, D.C. to Capitol Hill to fight for funding. And I do know that if we could get our hands on funding through that, I don't see why we wouldn't. So, but I don't have a definite answer on that one.
So we did have a couple of questions online. I'll just kind of group them together. One of them was if there are still red wolves in Louisiana. And the other question was if there's any talk about reintroducing or introducing red wolves into the western part of North Carolina in the mountains.
Well, at one point, there was a release in western North Carolina in the Smoky Mountains. Unfortunately, that release didn't work. There wasn't at the time enough prey for the wolves, and also the pups kept getting parvo and weren't surviving. So that sort of doomed that release, and they brought the wolves back in. And the first question was? And if wolves are still in Louisiana. They are studying a remnant population down there right now that is part red wolf. So, they're still doing a lot of work on that, but there are some wolves down in the Louisiana coast that certainly have some significant DNA of red wolf in them.
And it was near where the last red wolves were taken from the wild. The very last 14 that were taken in were from the western part of Louisiana and eastern part of Texas. And these wolves that Loti's talking about are probably remnants from that original group.
I've read that breeding with coyotes has been a reoccurring problem for red wolf populations. Does that pose any threat to red wolves as they are right now?
So there has been a problem with red wolves breeding with coyotes, but it only occurs when there are no red wolves. There aren't enough red wolves to breed with each other. So one of the things they're doing out where the red wolves live now is where there is a coyote, they're catching the coyotes and they are sterilizing them and then putting them back out onto the landscape so that they will hold their territory but not breed. Red wolves prefer red wolves. They generally mate for life. So if there are enough red wolves on the landscape, then hopefully you won't have the problem.
This is going to be from Karen. Karen, you should be able to go ahead and speak now if you'd like. Karen, if you could unmute, then you should be able to ask your question. If not, we might have to just keep moving on here. I did have a quick question real quick though. So in terms of studying red wolves, I mean, what still needs to be studied, I guess, to maximize conservation success? I know that's kind of a big question, but.
There's a lot of work to be done in studying red wolves. You know, right now we really have 10 collared red wolves, adults, and 5 pups on the landscape, which means there's less than 20. So, you know, that's a very small population to study. And what Cassia was talking about is, you know, we need to study the wildlife corridor issues. You know, we need to study wildlife conflict with, you know, humans. We need to do a lot more education with folks to understand how important these animals are to the environment. We teach a lot of classes to kids, and one of the things we always tell them is, you know, the myths that the big bad wolf are going to eat your grandmother and eat your babies are not true, because in fact, there's never been a red wolf that has harmed a person. And in fact, one of the 3rd graders that we taught wrote us a thank you note for teaching them about red wolves. And he said, and I just want to tell everybody that there's never been a red wolf involved in a crime scene. So that was really very cute. So there's a lot that needs to be studied about them. And there are a lot of people that are working really, really hard with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and then North Carolina Wildlife Resource and all these folks up here to try to learn as much as we can about them and save this species.
Is there a problem with red wolves, or will there be a problem with red wolves killing livestock? And it seems like I've heard that if there is livestock killed, that the owner of the livestock is compensated in some way. Is that the case?
I think there's a sort of a misconception that red wolves will take livestock. They've been studying the red wolves here for 32 years since they did the initial release. And in 32 years, there's been 9 cases of animals proven to be taken by red wolves, and they were barn cats and chickens. So there really have not been cases of livestock. There is a new program that is being paid for by the Red Wolf Coalition that if a person can determine that a red wolf did take some farm animal, then they will be compensated for it. But normally red wolves are terrified of people, and they're not going to be anywhere around us unless they are absolutely starving. And I think they found that most of the animals that were taken by red wolves were by older red wolves that had lost the ability to hunt. They're not going to go after cows, and that's just not what they do.
A lot of those attacks actually were from dogs, from feral dogs. As Loti said, red wolves do not like humans. They will stay away from humans. Coyotes are more habituated. Foxes are more habituated, but you will not generally see a red wolf around humans. They just don't want to be there.
Exactly. Very good. Okay. I want to thank you very much. We're going to move to the next section here, which is I'm going to ask Dale and Loti to please give a little introduction to the next film, which is For the Love of Red Wolves.
Thank you. We're really excited about this film. It was just released last week. And actually, as you saw Kat in the film that Cassia and Jennifer and Nancy did, that's when we met these ladies. We were actually out there while they were interviewing Kat. And we started talking about red wolves. And we've started teaching in our public school system, and we're now starting an after-school program. And we realized that there really aren't any films out there for young children, that depict what goes on in the life of a red wolf and how important they are to our environment. So we kind of brainstormed with these wonderful, talented women, and came up with the idea of doing a short film that would be offered free to everybody. And it's on YouTube now, and it's on our website, and we're offering it to all the public schools and private schools to use to teach kids about how wonderful these animals are. And it's a feel-good film. And we're really, really proud to bring it to everybody.
Just what she said.
The only other thing I would add is that Dale is a wildlife sculptor. And, we got to see firsthand how kids can fall in love with an animal by seeing art. Because they've done it by seeing his sculpture. And when we talked about the 50 locations that are breeding red wolves, he did a red wolf mom and pup out of alabaster, and we had it cast into limited edition castings, and have donated those to 39 of the breeding centers. And when we saw children being able to see this sculpture, we realized how powerful film then could be to help kids and adults. Our film is a great film for adults too, but especially for kids, that how, we're inspiring, we hope, the next generation of conservationists to take care of these animals.
From the very beginning, red wolves are born into a tight-knit family, with parents who are known to partner for life. As pups grow, so does their curiosity. Playfulness. Boldness. And sibling rivalry. What do red wolf families do together? They travel. They eat and rest. They spend quality time. They communicate with each other. And they work together to raise the next generation of red wolves. While red wolves try to avoid contact with humans, they sure do let loose around their own family. Red wolves are remarkable animals in so many ways, bringing a healthy balance to the world in which they live. In particular, by helping bird and deer populations flourish. With less than 20 living in the wild today, now more than ever, let's raise our voices for the love of red wolves.
So in this last film, this was truly just pure joy to create. One of the things we wanted to do is tie in the storyline that children can really relate with the wolves. So what they do with their families, red wolves do it too. So it is something we wanted to keep it short so they wouldn't get bored on us. And so we were really happy with what we're getting feedback wise from what Loti's seeing in the schools already.
Yeah, so we've taught 300 kids in the last 6 weeks in our public school system. And we're just starting an after-school program in 2023, and we hope to teach over 1,000 children. And we tried to film out with 8th graders, which is a really tough crowd. And they loved it. So we figured if we could get the 8th graders, we had it. So we can't wait to show the 3rd graders and the 1st graders. We're going to see some 1st graders in January. But we just love the film and the fun of it and the joy that it brings to watch it. I could just watch it, over and over and over again.
I just wanted to say, kind of as a background, both of these women sitting here next to me, none of us are filmmakers. We're all wildlife photographers, and we all met a little haphazardly. And then, when Cassia kind of brought the first film idea to us, it took, I don't know, maybe 3 seconds or less to 2.5 to say yes to her. But I think what I want to parlay is like, these are really short films, but the amount of time and work it took, for us to get this, and being in the trenches with these women has been like one of the most rewarding, times that I've had. And I just wanted to say one personal story because I think it's just funny. Oh, don't worry, nothing embarrassing. One, Cassia. I have lots of those too, but well, and it's kind of funny because so we're photographers, right? We're used to clicking still photos. And so we had to get it into our heads to actually film. And in the first film where you saw the old wolf, pictures with the white face, we call her affectionately Ghost. We were at the end, we had a very short time window to make this film. And so we'd gotten a lot of background, we've gotten a lot of other stuff. We got some bears, and we're getting really nervous because we need some wolves in this film because it's about wolves. And so, we're all kind of, we weren't saying it out loud. And I just remember, Cassia, we were kind of in separate cars and we were communicating, and Cassia said, I saw a wolf. And so we get over, Nancy and I get over there, and sure enough, Ghost goes into the brush, right? And we don't know where she's going to come out. So Cassie and I decide to kind of get on either side of the, very thick brush, between fields. And so we both get down, and we've got our cell phones, and we're on silent, but we're, communicating. So if the wolf, if the wolf came out on my side, I would film. If the wolf came out on Cassia's side, she would film, and then we would hopefully get something. And I just remember sitting there for 15 minutes and nothing, and I was like, oh my gosh, we've lost it. It's like the wolf's not there. And at this point, I'm very well hidden in the brush. And I'm sitting there, my legs are starting to fall asleep. And just out of nowhere, all of a sudden, here she comes. And that feeling of like, and I just remember in my head, the first thought is like, don't forget to film. Don't forget to film. Because of course, I wanted to start taking, photos, because that's what I'm used to. And so here's little Cassia sitting on my shoulder going, film, you have to film. And so I did, and so I'm hidden, and I've got the film, but anytime I would even move just a teeny bit, and of course, I'm camouflaged, my lens is camouflaged, I'm way down in the ground. But anytime I moved, she would kind of like, she would look around, and I was so afraid that I would lose her. And she would run off. So I had to sit really still, but literally like my hands are shaking, and we're communicating back and forth. And Cassie's like, well, are you filming? Yes. And, but it was just a really incredible moment. And I think we walked away from that, and we were just elated that we got Ghost, and we were just so happy. But it was, it was real, like a labor of love, like Cassia said, just being in the trenches with these ladies and waiting, and a lot of, eating whatever the heck we ate out of our cars and never leaving, from morning to night. So, but I just want to say to these two that, I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences to film with these ladies.
And to add to that little story, with the two of them down in the brush waiting. And I was like, where am I going to go? So what I did is I went to the far side of the field. I drove my car around, and from about 3/4 of a mile away, I had my binoculars and I could see her. I could see the wolf, but they couldn't see it. So I was texting to them, Jennifer, it's coming to your side. No, Cassie, it's coming to your side. But that's what it was. We were, the three of us were kind of did this circle, but there were lots of big high fives when that was over. Yeah, it was a good time.
When they do releases, do they release in bonded pairs? And then what has to happen for them to decide to release wolves into the wild?
Normally they do try to release bonded pairs, or at least put a male and a female together in an acclimation pen. So what they do is they put them in pens out in the middle of the refuges and leave them there for, a month or 2 months. They're feeding them as much whole prey as they can, and they hope at that point they'll bond. Red wolves generally mate for life, not always. So, but last year they actually released a family of 5. So it was a male and a female and 1-year-old pups, and then some 2-year-olds. And so that was a family unit. Unfortunately, they had to bring some of those back in because they became habituated. So does that answer your question? So the question is, how do they decide to release the ones in captivity? That's part of what we're learning as U.S. Fish and Wildlife does the releases, is trying to make sure that the wolves are as less habituated to people. So wolves that are kept off exhibit, that aren't around a lot of people, are the ones that they're finding are more successful. So they're trying to make sure that those wolves come from. In fact, a couple of the wolves have the one that the father of the pups right now, I think it was the father, it might have been the mother, came from St. Vincent Island, where they have some wild wolves down in Florida, and those have not been around people at all, and those have been very successful releases. So I think we'll see more of that.
The other part of the equation too is genetics. When you start with 14 wolves, you have to be careful that the genes don't get too focused or commingled. So what they're doing is of these 240 wolves that are in human care right now, they're looking at the genetic of each one of them to see how well they match up, to get the strongest genes out there, to get the best possible red wolves out there on the landscape that can survive. So there's a lot of science behind it. They just don't release wolves willy-nilly. It's a very, very scientific approach, and it's a learning curve too.
At one time, there were opportunities to go out at night and hear wolves howl in eastern North Carolina. Are those opportunities still available?
So technically, the refuges are daytime use. So depending on when daytime is over, the footage you saw of the wolves howling is actually what I got. And this was right before sundown. And it was the entire family kind of communicating. And it was just a fortunate event that I was there. And I kind of got down in the grass and I could hear them from all sides, and they were clearly all chatting with each other, the pups and the two parents. And so I sat, and all of a sudden mom came out into the road, and she just was howling away, like dinner was ready, or, you know, I don't know what she was trying to tell the pups. But then all of a sudden the two pups came out. So that shot you saw is the two pups came out and they played in the road, but it was like 45 minutes worth of just howling among all of them. And honestly, it was the most magical sound I've ever heard. I had to kind of pinch myself that I was actually hearing it. And so what I did was I got very low in the grass, almost kind of hidden. And I just sat, and it was getting quite, you know, photographically, it wasn't quite dark, but it was photographically, it was quite bad light. And so I just put on video, and I just videoed them doing that. But it was, yeah, that was really the only time I've heard them. They howl. These guys seem to howl a lot less than, say, gray wolves. But yes, it's a magical sound, and if you're lucky, you'll hear it. It's really wonderful. I did see one not too long ago, but it was late afternoon. So I don't know that they're taking them out at night anymore. Do you know if they are? Yeah. The refuge is it's close. I mean, it really is daytime use. So by nighttime, you're supposed to be out. But yeah, a lot of activity happens at night, of course, with wolves. Thank you for that.
Do some red wolves live in Mexico?
No, sweetie, they don't live in Mexico, but that's a great question.
Yeah, the film mentioned that the red wolves benefit the deer and birds. How do they do that? And is there a ecological benefit as well, as far as like plants? I'm thinking of Yellowstone with the gray wolves. Is that true with North Carolina also?
Wolves have an incredible effect on the ecosystem. The way that they help the deer is they take some of the smaller sick ones, which makes the herd healthier. And as far as birds go, they do eat raccoons and possums, which eat the birds' eggs. So where you have red wolves on the landscape, you're going to have generally better bird populations, both game birds and songbirds. So if you followed what happened in Yellowstone, there's a movie out that a lot of people have seen, you know, how wolves changed rivers. And it talks about how the wolves, by keeping the elk herds or the deer herds moving, help the native plants survive because they're not eating the tops off of it. And as you have more native plants, you have less invasives coming in. And of course, native plants are needed for caterpillars, which feed baby birds. So we're all connected. And it's this whole topic of trophic cascade, that the red wolf or the gray wolf is the apex predator, and they're helping all the animals that live around them be healthier, except maybe the ones they're eating, I always like to say, because those animals might not think that they're really helping, but they do help the plant life, they help the bird life, they help all of the animals. So
U.S. Fish and Wildlife actually did a survey out in Alligator River, looking at the deer populations and the game bird populations. And you can see a direct relationship with more red wolves on the landscape and larger and healthier deer populations and larger game bird population. So there is a direct result from that. Wildlands.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was actually Wildlands did that. There's actually a movie that they've got, The Last Stronghold, which is a great movie that shows the impact of the red wolves on the deer population and the red wolves.
You may have mentioned this before, but what time of the year did you go out and do all your work? And if it was in the summer, how did you avoid all the biting insects?
So we began filming late December, and finished up filming, I think, all the way to the end of April. I mean, we were getting in last minute film, all the way until we had like 5 days left to produce it. As far as the summer, you know, after the film was released, we did take a few, summer trips out, but in general, I'm also, I attract ticks. So every summer I would light up like a Christmas tree of ticks or bulbs or light bulbs. So that's that's my insect that takes me out every summer.
And I am an expert at red ants. So if there's a red ant mound somewhere, I will stand or sit in it. Always. And one of these days we might have to do an outtakes. And so yes, we have a couple of me dancing vigorously, trying to get red ants off of my legs and shoes. Oh, it's bad. But you know, when you've got to get a job done, you just grin and bear it.
Thank you. Well, first of all, you have two beautiful films, and I hope and I assume you're going to be entering them in whatever wildlife photography competitions that come up. I know the Wildlife Society has one, but a lot of others do as well. I have a practical question, though. When Fish and Wildlife first released wolves in North Carolina, they naturally did it on a refuge, and so the local ranchers thought that was fine. Well, of course, as the population increased, they got off the refuge, they started being hit by cars, ranchers started shooting them. And I've never understood why they don't put them in more protected areas. We have military bases like Camp Lejeune and Fort Bragg that have the habitat, Savannah Riverland. There are thousands of acres of good habitat surrounded by fences, so they won't get onto private land. They won't get hit by cars. I have never understood why they don't use those types of places for releases.
You make a really great point, first of all. And in the recent meeting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife was the first time they publicly allowed for thinking in that regard and starting to release them maybe in other areas. There is some realization that although Alligator River is, you know, a great place, it is surrounded by roads, it's surrounded by a lot of farmland. And so, yes, U.S. Fish and Wildlife is actually now actively considering that, which is really good. And I think we all can agree with you here that there's probably much better habitat where there's a lot more land and not the traffic and the human conflict where they can be released, where they'll do better. So it's great that U.S. Fish and Wildlife is moving, at least in their thoughts, in that direction. And so we'll of course have to see what happens, but it's great that they're even thinking about it. And
I just wanted to touch on something related to what Jen said. Even if the red wolf population didn't live in the refuges fragmented by highway systems, there are hundreds, if not thousands of other wildlife species in that area that do, including some of the largest black bears in the country. It is not abnormal for us to be on foot with 600 to 800 pound male bears. And if a family is traveling to the Outer Banks on one of these roads, which over 1 million do every summer season, imagine colliding with an 800-pound black bear. So either way, we have this issue that needs to be addressed with wildlife corridors. So I really appreciate your thought on that. But I did want to also touch on the fact that this is an issue that, you know, even as the coastal line inches forward into the land, more animals are going to be coming through and traveling even more so. So then it's just going to be a problematic future if we don't get those corridors built. Thank you.
We have an online question from Abby Richardson, and she wants to know if you would recommend any other lesson plans, infographics, or other resources for teachers and informal educators.
One of our goals is to be putting lesson plans on our website. We're not quite there yet, but there are a lot of resources. If you Google lesson plans for red wolves, or and there's a lot of films. One of the things we've done is we started the Red Wolf Gallery, which actually all three of these talented photographers have donated some of their film, and we've got a lot of films on that are all children oriented. And that's redwolfgallery.org, and you can download free photos. And we don't have lesson plans on it yet, but we hope to. So hopefully we're building that library that'll be resources. But any teachers can get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to share what we have. And if they do want to get in touch, it would be weilerwoodsforwildlife.com.
Not sure if I'm going to be able to phrase this really well, but when you think about where all the red wolves are being bred, the locations of those and the climate of those areas, has there ever been a problem, or is there a limitation trying to release them here in this climate, or are the red wolves just so easily and quickly adaptable that it doesn't really pose a problem at all? Does that make sense? Okay.
The range of red wolves was as far north as New York, which is cold, and all the way down to Florida and out to Texas. So, you'd think that red wolves being bred out in Washington State, where they have never been historically, might present a problem, but it has not. They've been able to acclimate. But the red wolves can take amazing different terrains. I mean, look at them in the marshlands in eastern North Carolina, and they were thriving out there at one time.
Thanks. Well, I just want to say thank you so much to Cassia, and to Dale and Loti, and to Jennifer and Nancy. Let's give it up for this team and all that they did. Thank you so much. And I'd like to, I hope those that are here, I'd like you to stick around a little bit. We have some fresh baked chocolate chip cookies in the back. We have some fresh popcorn, various kinds of iced tea, all kinds of refreshments. Please stay. Let's chat a little bit. And I know that the panel here will be here. We'll be mingling a little bit, and you can ask some more questions. And we also have a raffle, as you know, and Jeff over here is going to do the big draw, and we'll do that in just a few minutes. We also are always happy to have you consider membership. And so we can share information about the North Carolina Wildlife Federation and our chapter, as well as we're always happy to take donations, which we can also do over here. Thank you so much. This is going to conclude the webinar portion of this event. Thanks everybody that's online for joining tonight. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And the rest of you here in the room, please stick around. Thank you.